So it's my very great pleasure, everyone, to welcome our next set of panellists who have another exciting topic to talk to us about today. And it's a huge pleasure for me to be able to introduce our moderator who has put together this fantastic group of people to talk to us. And I'll just read out Robin's bio for you. Robin Bruce, FN, BSN, RN, is an advocate for nurses in space and the urgency to address mental health in interstellar travel. As the chairman of both CCBN Inc. Aerospace, the space nursing arm of the Colorado Council of Black Nurses, and the CCBN Aerospace Nursing Department, Robin addresses interplanetary healthcare, employing drone nursing and nurse aviation, as well as other aspects of aerospace nursing to realise how health maintenance of the total person, also known as preventative holistic healthcare, is vital to the success of life off Earth under conditions where medical supplies and resources are scarce. Robin has put her qualification as an aerospace nurse from the United States Air Force School of Aerospace Medicine to good use, as evidenced by elections and appointments to the Colorado Space Business Roundtable Board of Directors, Nurse Physician Advisory Task Force for Colorado Health, the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics Life Sciences and Systems Technical Committee, and the AIAA Space Settlement Technical Committee. Grooming the next generation of space explorers, Robin spearheaded CCBN's Junior Nurse Aviator and Junior Analog Astronaut programs, and chairs the CCBN Space Expo, a global initiative that brings the aerospace community across STEAM disciplines to inspire, encourage, and guide school-aged youth from all walks of life to see themselves as an integral part of the future of space. Robin's 39-plus year nursing career has been centred around respiratory and immunology medicine, aeromedical evacuation, infection control, for which she received a USAF Commendation Medal, communicable disease management, including the 3 pandemics of tuberculosis, HIV/AIDS, and COVID-19, and clinical research, including recombinant DNA, which is the forerunner of stem cell research, all of which have marked space implications. So thank you very much indeed. It's a great honour to have you all with us today. And I'd now like to hand over to you, Robin. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Christensen. It's truly a pleasure to be here. I was excited when Rowena said that, I could present on space nursing. I'm always wanting, ready, and able to present on what we see as the next frontier in space, right? You've never heard of a nurse in space. And so we want to make that a reality by 2025, because realistically, you cannot successfully and sustainably stay outside of Earth's orbit without some type of holistic preventative health care, and not just medicine, but care, right? So I am definitely looking forward to forging that frontier. It is indeed an honor to be able to host this panel at the 2023 International Humans in Space Summit, which brings international research and industry communities together to bridge the gap between science, industry, research, and communities for human exploration of space in a diverse and accessible manner. I thank Dr. Rowena Christensen of the Ad Astra Vita Project, Taking Life to the Stars, for graciously allowing us the opportunity to explore, discover, and share our thoughts about space for a better Earth. I'd also like to give props to our distinguished panel of air and space industry experts from across the world through various time zones and juggling hefty schedules for their willingness and courage to lend their knowledge in area outside of their respective expertise. So these are all space folks, and I've asked them, space and air folks, and I've asked them to tackle issues that have to do with healthcare, right? But I did that on purpose because it requires all of us to work together with our respective education and expertise to make life work outside of Earth's orbit and help Earth at the same time, right? So it's a back and forth. So Without further ado, I present you this year's panel in alphabetical order by first name. So you can just wave when I call your name. Christopher Robertson, Director of Colorado State University Drone Center. Wave, there we go. Don Zoldi, Colonel, United States Air Force, retired and Esquire, CEO of P3 Tech Consulting. Gertrude, Trudy Namitala, Technical Director of SPLAC Innovations. And I saw her come on. Where is she? Oh, she's down at the bottom. I don't know if she can turn her camera on or not, but she is with us today. And then James Grimsley, I'm Executive Director of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. Hi, James. And Shea Fehrenbach, lead at the Counter-UAS Center of Excellence, Oklahoma State University. Oh, there's Trudy. So it's good seeing everyone. Yeah. Okay, so I'll start in reverse order with Shea, then James, Trudy, Don, and Chris to introduce yourselves by first stating your name and then telling us a tidbit regarding what you want us to learn about you and your presence within the aerospace industry. So something familiar. Each of you in 2 minutes or less, please. So go ahead, Shea.
Robin, thank you for having me on here. I'm definitely very excited to be speaking on this panel. So hello, everybody. My name is Shea Fehrenbach. As Robin stated, I'm the center lead for the Counter-UAS Center of Excellence at Oklahoma State University. We primarily run a lab group here at the university, primarily funded through grants, contracts, differing levels to assist with the integration of advanced aerospace into the national airspace, as well as just increasing the technological capability of, well, in this case, the world. There are a lot of things that we can learn from UAS or even UXS, any types of autonomous vehicles, and there are a lot of technologies that can be furthered just by, at the tinkering level, the hobbyist level, all the way to the national labs level. And so what we are hoping to do is bring those technological advancements to the forefront, try to lead with innovation, and try to have fun doing it while we're at it.
Thank you. James.
Yes, my name is James Grimsley. So I serve as the Executive Director of Advanced Technology Initiatives with the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. I have another hat that I'm also an Oklahoma State Transportation Commissioner. So I have basically two different aspects of transportation that I deal with. The Choctaw Nation is a historically impoverished area. It was the first tribe that came across what is now called the Trail of Tears in the 1830s, or starting in the 1830s. I grew up right in the heart of the Choctaw Nation and actually experienced that generational poverty. I'm a first generation college graduate. My degrees are in aerospace engineering and mechanical engineering. And for years, we exported our brightest out of the reservation because there was no opportunity. We've actually turned that around. So we're very active in emerging aviation. We have a very large emerging aviation test range that's gained quite a bit of notoriety. But we also are working with NASA on all sorts of projects. We just recently announced a project with Oklahoma State University to fly some of our heirloom seeds to the International Space Station, or fly aboard the International Space Station, IHS. And there's some history there, and that when the Choctaw people were moved across what is now the United States back in the 1830s, they could only bring what they could carry. And so they wanted to preserve those seeds that had been around for many, many, hundreds of years or longer. They sewed them many times into their clothing so that those seeds would survive. And when they got to their new homeland, which is now Oklahoma, that they could plant those and continue to harvest those same seeds, those heirloom seeds. So there's some pretty neat things going on. But in general, we're looking to leapfrog, to overcome all of these problems we have from a rural community that involves generational poverty. We want to leapfrog, and we see technology as a way that we leapfrog and improve safety, quality of life, quality of health. So thank you for inviting us here. We're very excited to talk about some of the things that we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Trudy.
It's good morning here. It's 3 a.m. I'm happy to be with all of you. My name is Gertrude Namitala. I'm from Zambia. Happy to be here with everyone. And we have been using drones in some of the work that we've been doing, basically for the medical sector. And some of the during the West Africa, the Ebola outbreak, drones were being used. I come from a community called the OpenStreetMap community, where we have been using different use cases when it comes to drones. So I'm happy to be on this panel, and I hope to learn from all of you to see what we could replicate here as well where we are. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Dawn.
Hey everybody, Dawn Zoldi here. I am the CEO and founder of a company called P3 Tech Consulting. Our three main lines of effort are consulting, content creation, and education. As Robin said, I'm a retired colonel in the United States Air Force and got to learn a lot about drones as, you know, kind of moved up in the ranks and doing operational law, and just kind of caught the bug for it. Really became passionate about it, started researching on my own, writing, kind of doing that speaking tour, even in the military. But I also knew that drones were going to change the world, and that they were going to be the future. And so I continued doing that, and won that Women in Drones, Women to Watch Award in 2019. And that inspired me to create my company. And it's been a wild ride ever since. And I hope you guys all will follow me on LinkedIn and check out my website, P3 Tech Consulting. You can see all of my articles and podcasts up there.
Thank you. Chris.
Hello, everybody. I'm Christopher Robertson. I'm the director of the Colorado State University Drone Center. I'm also the airport manager for our research and test range, which is our Crispin Airfield, which CSU has its own airport. It's about a 400-acre runway facility with, it was there at the original dawn of aviation in 1928. And now we are moving into the next generation of aviation as our UAS test site facility. We do all manner of testing, from Counter-UAS to training, education, and various different things there. Professor at CSU, starting to teach UAV education as well. And the CSU Drone Center really is a organization that does three things. One, we do a lot of research enabling of UAVs, so taking sensors, capabilities, using UAVs in a way and supporting research into what they can do in terms of the next steps. And that runs the gamut from agriculture to industrial to methane emissions and inspection to all sorts of those types of things in that area. Next thing we do is education. We run a lot of both community-based and industry-focused UAV education, from initial first steps to more complicated steps to first responder schools. Also 4-credit college aviation classes here at CSU. And then the last is a service organization. We pride ourselves in maintaining a cadre of pilots. A lot of them are students here at CSU that are well trained. And we go out and achieve missions that can be logistically and technically difficult in the UAV space, either with our aircraft or others. We maintain a fleet of aircraft, trying to maintain the most recent generations. We also build, modify, and maintain UAVs. Right now we have 3 student UAV projects moving forward for several companies who contract us to build unique systems for them. And then generally it is a center that arrives around training, education, and moving UAVs forward in this next chapter of aviation.
All right. So it was great getting a quick tidbit on all of you and what's important to you. So we're going to take that to the next level, of course. So those who may be wondering, you know, why is the nurse getting involved with drones? And even if you're not wondering, you know, I'm going to tell you anyway. I had the opportunity to get a couple of scholarships, one to the GEO Week at the beginning of this year, as well as Exponential, thanks to Don, of course, where I learned about drones, how they function, what all that they can do. And then I learned that there were lawyers in space, and I was like, I couldn't believe that. So I made sure that I attended Exponential because I wanted to see what on earth do lawyers do in space, right? And I learned so much, and my wheels got to churning. My mind got to just really racing. I'm like, this is a lot that we could use for healthcare to assist nurses in delivering proper care, all the places that we have to deliver care, right? So we're not just stationed in hospitals, we're stationed in home health. We go to people's homes. We have to go to remote areas in emergency medicine. Sometimes you might have to go on a mountainside, on the battlefield. So there's so many areas that nursing has to go, and a lot of those areas just aren't safe, right? And so I thought, especially when seeing the drones, oh, these are so many opportunities that nurses can get a better look at the scope of what's needed without risking their lives all the time. So with that said, there are so many factions that we could use a drone, from even going down to homeless camps, right? We're at the age in the United States where there are a lot of homeless camps, and some of those conditions are just not safe for nurses to enter, even though we do anyway. I mean, my mentor, she'll go anywhere to deliver health care. But, we want to maintain as much of our health care folks as possible. So with that said, let's begin to tread the waters just a little bit. And what I'll do is I'll give a question that's kind of focused on what I saw in your bio as an area of interest, but it's actually everyone can answer, but the person that I name has to answer first. Okay, is that fair? Can you handle that? Okay, so this one is for everyone, so you can just kind of get relaxed. And so what are some of the ways that you can think of where drones and other UAVs have or can improve life on Earth as a whole or in communities? And you can just chime in at will. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, this is James Grimsley. We are looking at ways that we can overcome some of the inequities we have between rural tribal communities and urban areas. And we suffer, in a lot of parts of the world, we suffer from this access to quality healthcare, access to healthy food options, things like that. And in reality, what happens is around the globe, our postal codes, or zip code or postal codes, actually are predictors of our health outcomes and so many things about us. And all of those really come down to transportation disadvantages and inequities. So what we're looking at in the Choctaw Nation is overcoming some of those health inequities and some of those problems by overcoming some of the ground transportation issues. Most rural areas around the world do not have safe or efficient ground transportation. And if you look out on the horizon, the expense of building out massive highway networks, to all these areas is not feasible financially. It's also destructive to the environment. So we're looking at things like drones as being able to do simple things like move samples between our Choctaw Nation clinics so that we can do more rapid testing, pull people off the highways where it's less dangerous, but also moving food around. So there's a whole lot of things that we're looking at doing that will overcome some of those transportation problems and actually sort of leapfrog into the future where we start to improve that equity between urban and rural areas.
Thank you. Go ahead. Thank you. Don?
Yeah, so during the introduction of you, Robin, we heard about all the different pandemics you've been involved in. And COVID-19, frankly, kind of made drone deliveries to really take off. Why? Because they are the ultimate social distancers. And, you saw Walmart partnering with DroneUp, and that very first use case was actually of COVID test kits. So it wasn't, flying chickens. It wasn't, delivering the lemons. It was keeping people safe in their homes, letting them take those tests and deliver them to Walmart that way. So really, really interesting. By the way, I'm going to drop something in the chat for everybody. James was actually on a PBS special that I was involved in with the Wings Over the Rockies Museum, called Behind the Wings. We focused on drones and air taxis, basically. But we walk around the Daisy Ranch out there in Durant, Oklahoma with James and his team. And I commend that to everybody's attention because it's a really great show. And it talks about all the different great use cases James was just mentioning.
All right. Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, I think one of the things I'd like to touch on is Colorado State University is an agriculture school, and we focus very strongly on sustainability and what's looking at the next generation of plants, essentially. We have several of our research facilities here in Colorado are based around all sorts of different trials, whether it's disease-resistant wheat to drought-resistant corn, and how do we keep those sustainable for the future, and how do we make a better plant? And UAVs have been really opportunistic and much easier to gather research and longevity data samples than that. So right now we fly throughout the entire growing season, and every single season we upgrade sensors and aircraft to be able to better document these research trials and test plots. These also have implications on the larger farming as a whole, as it comes into how does a farmer be able to water their crops better? How do they be able to fertilize their crops better? And using that remote sensing technologies that UAVs can provide through my multispectral and even RGB imagery, once those become more readily accessible and easier to operate and use, can have a lot of implications on the food industry and the growing industry across the nation.
All right, thank you. And Pavithra, so you don't forget your question, can you type it in the chat, or your hand was up, or somebody said, oh no, that was my hand. Okay, anybody else want to chime in before I move to the next question? All right, excellent answers. So let me start honing in on folks. So Christopher, you're the first one on my list. I'm going. You have, of course, like you mentioned, deployed, managed, and founded unmanned aircraft systems that have effectively provided fire, police, and search and rescue drone services for public and private sectors. How can UAVs or drone technology be useful in monitoring public or community health, especially in areas that could put healthcare workers at risk or where areas of habitation may not be easily recognizable from the ground level?
That's a great question. And, one things that I talk about that UAVs truly give people the potential is something I call the fourth dimension. And I'm not talking about, the ookum spookums, the ghosts, your hair rise, but the fourth dimension is 400 feet above your head, or the ability to quickly access the lower atmosphere of and sometimes even higher atmosphere of the airspace. That used to be something that was relegated purely to traditional aviation. And that's a very costly endeavor. It's a very risky endeavor because you have somebody in board and things can go wrong. Well, when UAVs came along, we had a way to, in a few minutes, be able to see the world above our heads from a few hundred feet. And that opened up all kinds of possibilities, especially in the remote monitoring sections. So COVID's a great example. I know Don already brought that up. One thing we saw in the rise of COVID was thermal technology to remotely read people's temperatures. So they were scanners at places where people could walk in and we could see if somebody had an elevated temperature and see maybe they had a fever and they should not come in and we should isolate. There's some technology being looked at how to do that with drones. We're still struggling a little bit with that technology because the fidelity of the thermal camera, especially in the small UAS area, is not as good as we need currently. And, people don't like when you fly a drone right up to their face to get their temperature. So we're still working on some of that fidelity on there and on where we get that. That's one impact I can see. Another thing that came out of COVID with the drones in the healthcare industry that we looked at pretty closely was using UV lights on drones to go into environments such as operating rooms or even classrooms or other things. And with the drone flying around with high intensity UV lights on it, you'll be able to sterilize the environment in a remote area and make it safer. There are several systems still to this day that exist. I know that they were looking for testing and efficacy centers for this to be able to actually prove out the technology, another technology we get into. And then this was a little more simpler one. It was kind of a interesting tidbit, but we put drones on speakers and we're able to access remote environments and tell them, hey, go back in your house. Then you need to be able to isolate. This is a dangerous situation. We wouldn't have to put that worker, in your case, the healthcare worker or the monitor in that situation where they might be exposed. When it comes to like remote areas, now there are different areas where I don't want to steal anybody's thunders because I saw some drone delivery stuff coming up, but the ability to simply access and see things from a distance and get close has a lot of implications in what we can do to not put people into harm's way. Now we're still kind of developing those technologies out a little bit more to be able to figure out exactly what they can do. Obviously, lots of spinning blades close to people is a problem. So we're figuring out what the close-in monitoring could do. But right now, in terms of the ISR is what we call, which is intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, which is kind of a scary word to say around drones. A lot of the drones on the market have figured it out. Things like the aircraft called the Dragonfish, commercially available from Autel, that can fly for 2 hours and has a 20x optical zoom with thermal camera, all sorts of different payloads that will enable us to get long distances, see things far away in an immediate manner, and get that intelligence. So how many people are there? Is there signs of distress? Kind of a pre-scouting mode that can be assistance there too.
All right, thank you. Anybody else want to weigh in on that question?
I just want to brag on Dragonfly for a second. I know Shea has his hand up too, so I'll let him go. I'll be quick. during the pandemic. So they have artificial intelligence. In fact, when that company was created, that was one of the first things they dabbled in was AI before it was even a thing, right? So they did use it on their drones during COVID. Now, it did not, I think it did not meet with great public acceptance because the law enforcement agency that rolled this out didn't really do any kind of campaign to like introduce this to the public. And we're going to talk about privacy here shortly. People are very concerned about that. But the bottom line is their vital intelligence AI product, when married up with a camera and a drone, takes all the vital statistics, not just temperature. It'll take your heart rate, your respiration, all kinds of things. And in fact, they're using it with the Drone Racing League and those pilots that have the virtual reality goggles. They're taking all their vital statistics during the flights. To just, so anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there that there is that technology and it actually does work and it has been used.
Thank you. Shea?
So I'm glad you chimed in there, Dawn, because what you said about integration of the different types of spectral cameras as well, with 20 times optical zoom and being able to take those spectral or heat signatures from people or from the environment, that then kind of merged with what Chris was saying with accessing hard to reach places. I'll give an example. In near Stillwater, there's a lake called Lake Carl Blackwell, and there's an invasive species there called the yellow floating heart. It's it's an invasive lily pad, essentially. And the problem with this is that it lives under the water. It blocks the sun from the ecosystem within there, and it really likes shallow water. So it's in an area that it'll be in the middle of, Oklahoma has a lot of lakes. Oklahoma has a lot of coastline, even though we're landlocked. So they're in hard to reach places for people. Boats can't get there, and there's really nothing you can do. So if you have this invasive species coming through, you're decreasing water quality, you're decreasing, you're hurting the animals, decreasing the quality of life for the ecosystem in the region. So what we were doing is utilizing multispectral cameras to find out where are these hotspots within the lake. And that's using IR or even using, again, the more nitrogen and hydrogen type of spotting, nitrogen type of spectral cameras. And then with that, we were able to find out where do we need to start placing this herbicide. Now, one thing that we didn't know about it beforehand, and these are things that we can only learn by experimentation and by seeing cause and effect of your attempts to eradicate problems, is you can't just spray pesticide over the tops of lilies. That's not where their roots form. So we then developed a system that would actually hover on the UAV with the cameras, find the hotspots, and dip a tube into the water and kind of like a local anesthesia type of a manner, inject that herbicide in those very remote places. So that's just one example of those hard to reach places, not necessarily for nurses, but if you want to think of it as nurses for the earth in some cases, or even for local economy. It's just another example of how you can utilize those tools to really benefit the entire ecosystem.
Thank you. All right. I don't want to miss anybody. Anybody else chiming in on that question? Okay. And Trudy, we're going to give you an opportunity to say what you wanted to say earlier. There might be a little lag between, because you're kind of far away from me, it might be a little lag between the question actually gets to you. But the next question is yours as well, so you can answer both of them at the same time. So Trudy, you have founded and served in organizations that have promoted the mapping of the continent of Africa and open mapping for disaster preparedness, mitigation and response, and economic development for humanitarian purposes and community development, as well as provided strategic ideas that are being implemented in communities across the world. What mechanisms can be or have been employed to help get medical supplies to remote areas or hard to reach areas in everyday, let alone emergency situations, in a timely manner? And tell us what that looks like.
All right, thank you so much, Robin. Yeah, so because of my work in the humanitarian sector and working with a lot of communities, we have been we've deployed various innovations, come up with different ways in how medical supplies can reach hard to reach areas. I am on ground and I see some of the things that happened. I remember one time there was an area, it had flooded and they needed medical supplies, and the only solution for the medical supplies to reach, because sometimes you find that when it rains, when we have heavy rainfalls, some places are totally cut off. The bridges, like the villages, the bridges are not strong enough. An area will be completely cut off, completely, like they cannot access food, they cannot access medical help. So you find that drones are the best option to use in such areas. And sometimes you find that the road network, if there are no rains, but the places to navigate to those areas, because not all roads are okay. You find that mostly in the urban centers, that is where you find a good road network, or places that are near the capital cities. But as you continue going further from capital cities, it starts to get a bit messier and messier. A place where it could take you maybe 5 hours to navigate, sometimes you find that you can take even a full day. So if you're going to drive there, it is going to take a long time. So what has been happening, drones have been starting to be accepted, but also one of the things that's been done is to train the local communities, because if you don't have acceptance from the local communities, they tend to feel what you're bringing in is foreign. So training of the local communities to make sure that they get to know the importance of drones in their communities, so that when they see them, they don't find it so funny. And even the health personnel's capacity building for them is being done a lot, so that they get to know that this is something they could all accept. Many countries are starting to accept partnerships, public-private partnerships, with companies that provide either they manufacture or they provide solutions for humanitarian aid, not only humanitarian aid, but in different aspects of drones, like the usage of drones. There's a question that she asked at first about other aspects, not only the health part, for drone, how UAVs are being used. A lot of times we have used them because we do a lot of community mapping activations in SPLAC Innovations, and also the other organizations that I work for that are doing humanitarian work, but when it's basically it's open mapping. So we deploy a lot of drones in every sector that we are working in, because we collect data for every sector. So most of the times we deploy drones. And for example, like energy sector, recently I worked with USTDA with a company, a US company here in Zambia, that got a grant with USTDA to, we did drone mapping, and we made sure that also we designed sites for mini grid solution service provision for the areas, because not every area has access to energy. That's also a challenge. So even in the rural areas, you find that the hospitals sometimes run out of energy. And if that happens, then you find the vaccinations can't be kept well. So that's where, like, now we did that to make sure that they have constant supply of power. So that is what one of the things we've used drones for. We've been using them in different aspects, but to go back to what we are talking about today is that even though we are doing it in the medical field and delivering vaccines and everything, there are different regulatory frameworks and permissions based on each country. So you find that some countries it's a bit hard. I remember the first time, I think it was 2017, we were in Uganda and we had the conference, and most people are bringing in their drones, and they were telling them not to bring the drones into the country. They were stopping them at the airport. So you find that some countries are not accepting yet fully. Some are starting to accept, but the regulations are still a bit tight. And to get a drone license in some countries, it gets a bit very hard. So you find that these are some of the challenges. You find that even when someone wants to come and innovate something on delivery of medical supplies, with strict regulations, they'll be limited to come up with a very good innovation to do their deliveries, to do their innovation, so that we improve the sector, because we really need as many service providers as possible to make sure that we have people get access like to HIV test kits, like what UNICEF is doing. UNICEF has been using UAVs to transport HIV testing kit and even other critical supplies in hard to reach areas in Africa like Malawi. So you find that we need very much the medical supplies to reach, but also the policies around them need to change. Like also we need to make sure that integration with emergency response systems, like working with the national health providers like the Ministry of Health, to see to it that whatever they do, it aligns also, whatever the deployment of drones aligns with their health priorities, because they have different health priorities. So if this is done, there will be more acceptance, and there will be more acceptance to drones to be used in the medical field. Yeah, so there's what I want to speak about this. So we could talk maybe after this, so that I give other people a chance. Thank you.
Thank you. And it makes total sense, concerns on both sides, right? Because Shea can talk a little bit about the Counter-UAS, but, without really being able to identify if it's a friendly drone or a non-friendly drone, and people who have come in situations where they're, actively in a war, where drones are being used to take down areas and wipe out areas. Well, it can be very scary to see something like that coming into your community, and you're not sure if it's something there that's going to help you or something that's going to hurt you. And of course, that impacts things like in many African nations, just the delivery of blood, right? Women in childbirth trying to give birth, and that can be a very life-threatening situation, especially with moms tend to bleed out a lot, and you need the blood. So how do you get it there without it being blocked? So those are great challenges that are affecting the efficient delivery of healthcare. Did anybody else want to weigh in on that? And thank you, Gertrude, for your input. All right. Well, so since we're talking about that, well, Dawn, you're up next. So with nearly 3 decades of experience as a licensed attorney, a Part 107 certified drone pilot, an internationally recognized expert on uncrewed craft system law and policy, what legal implications regarding HIPAA should be considered in the delivery of healthcare and health information through use of drones?
All right. Well, thank you kindly for that second introduction. I also have to give props to the CSU Drone Center, because I'm a licensed pilot because of them. I took their class and woohoo, I passed. So anyway, so for those that don't know, HIPAA is the long name of it is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. That came into effect in April 2003. And really, it's designed to protect privacy and security of health data. Now, there's been amendments to this. The HIPAA privacy rule is in the Code of Federal Regulations, and there's a lot of rights that attach as a result of this statute. Things like the right to access, inspect, copy your protected health information, request amendments to that information, all of these other things, right? So your question is, how could HIPAA be implicated with drones? Well, here's the short answer. Drones are flying computers, right? So a drone is only a tool, and what drones do is collect data. And so once again, if you're a medical organization in the United States and or globally, I'm sure there's similar statutes out there, like Europe has the GDPR, which isn't specifically health focused, but just general, very encompassing on health data, the general data protection regulation. Your duty as a medical treatment facility or someone giving care is to protect that information. And so really, when you think about it, it's no different than what you're doing on a daily basis with anything that's already on your computer, whether it's your laptop, your network. It's just data protection and data privacy. And so again, lots of laws can be implicated here, not just HIPAA. But one thing I want to throw out there is, this really unique circumstance. Trudy was talking about delivering blood as an example. Well, let's just say, we're delivering medicines now, right, by drone. Because some states in the United States anywhere, are allowing this. And I know that's something Walmart wants to get into. Well, what happens when accidentally that package gets delivered to your neighbor or falls in the wrong backyard? So really weird privacy issues raised here outside of that kind of digital world when you think typically about HIPAA and data privacy, because now we're talking about, your actual medicines and the information on a bottle, or your vaccine, or, whatever it is that's being delivered. And, how do you protect that? I think this is, there's a lot of things people haven't really thought through because we haven't been faced with it necessarily yet. And I think what we're going to see is, and how is this going to be impacted by insurance? Think about that too. So lots of different branches and sequels we can squirrel down right now, but I want to respect everybody's time. I think, the bottom line for HIPAA and for digital privacy is treat it just like you would anything you already have on your computer, because the same rules are going to apply no matter where you are in the world.
Thank you. Anybody else want to weigh in on that? Some good stuff going on in the chat, and I'll try to read those at the end because it's a bit of navigating, trying to keep up with both. And I know
actually
Don's
Adrian has been asking a lot of questions. She just made a great comment. I assume it's a she, but I don't know. Porch package thefts already occur without drone deliveries, right? So now add the medical aspect to what is being delivered. I mean, definitely, there's porch deliveries now of medicines, I think. So I guess those legal paradigms would apply to a package being delivered out of the sky.
Yeah.
And I just say, I think it depends on what kind of neighbors you have, right? So if your neighbor is the kind of person that gets the package and it was for you, or what kind of person you are, do you give it to your neighbor, or are you that kind of neighbor that doesn't? So how are you getting along with your neighbor? So it raises a lot of big issues.
I'd like to add that it also depends on where you are. So not just whether you know your neighbors well or not, but also, are you in an area of civil disrupt or warfare? As maybe not at this exact moment, since this is still an emerging industry, but in the future, as we start getting down that path, there's going to be infrastructure being built. There's going to, it's starting to be a thing. And coming from the counter-UAS point of view, what if we start seeing areas such as cyber takeovers? So now you're not only disrupting, bringing life-needed medicine or life-saving medicine to people, you could even go and cyber takeover. And you can, and depending on what you know about a specific person or about a specific route, one could ideally go and track down what flight path, what's coming down the pike, and they could take that, or even do it in the Mark One, the standard way, which I think, depending on what area you are, that could be, whether jamming or shotgun, net gun, fish hook, whatever, depending on where you're from, something to bring down a drone. So this can be disrupted in very simple ways as well.
Yeah, it takes trash digging to the next level, right? You have those stories about people going through folks' trash to really find out about them and learn their habits and things. Like, there's so much information you'd be able to glean off of a drone. Anyone else before I move on to the next question? All right. See, James, as an aerospace and a mechanical engineer with more than 32 years of professional experience in the aviation and defense industry, you have managed to keep a low environmental imprint on the reservation despite having one of the largest UAV testing grounds in the world. What environmental impacts do you foresee with the process of employing drones and getting healthcare to remote or hard to reach areas? How do we prevent a space junk type of scenario where drones could be clouding the skies, blocking the sun, menacing animals, and disturbing natural habitats?
Yeah, very, very good question. And there's actually several facets to that. One is that we're seeing a new type of propulsion system emerge, which is a direct drive electric propulsion. And in the case of many drones, it's what we call distributed electric propulsion. And if you look at the first more than a century of aviation, we had very complex mechanical propulsion systems that were prone to failure, prone to fatigue. And if you look at really a lot of our regulations, they're really centered around two sort of weaknesses. One is the fallacy of the human, what a pilot can see, how we can react, when we get tired, things like that. And then the other has to do with really the propulsion system, how often we maintain it, what are the standards, what are the qualifications to maintain it. But what we're seeing now is we're moving to electric propulsion, which has the reliability of an electrical system versus a mechanical system. So it's far more reliable. So what we're seeing are systems that are potentially a lot quieter. They don't necessarily have the emissions at the point of use. So the drone is not having some emission as long as it's electric. But what we're seeing is that it has a tremendously lower impact than people on the ground. We can go into very fragile ecosystems and do something without damaging it. We're not putting feet on the ground. We're not driving a vehicle on the ground. And so we're seeing pretty tremendous things. We're seeing that drones interact with wildlife a lot better because they don't have the noise that other systems have. And we have bison herd. We have tremendous wildlife at our own reservation, and we never have any issues with the wildlife. It doesn't disturb them. We're flying all sorts of equipment, all sizes, and it really doesn't bother them. But ultimately, what's going to happen is if you look at how we build our road networks, it's very disruptive to the environment. We destroy watersheds, we destroy ecosystems, we disrupt wildlife corridors. Our automobiles are some of the biggest predators of animals and wildlife on the planet, more killed that way than almost anything else. And so what we see with moving to drone deliveries, we reduce that traffic, but we also can potentially reduce that demand for continuing to build these road networks, which is very, very destructive to the environment. But you talked about how do we handle all these drones in the sky? It gets into how we manage them. The neat thing about on the horizon, looking at it from an engineer, is we're building systems that are pretty much already ready to be automated. And we can fly with systems that have some sort of autonomy where they're looking at all directions at once, making decisions very, very quickly. But ultimately, we put these under an umbrella called UAS traffic management. There's some really neat technology that's coming together where we fuse everything about the operating environment, where the aircraft are, who they are, weather data, all sorts of things, obstacles. We fuse that data together into this overarching umbrella system that allows us to deconflict traffic and also to basically avoid problems. If I'm going to do drone delivery, I want to know what the gustiness is, what the wind gustiness will be that day. But the neat thing about on the horizon, if we look at it, the human role will change. Instead of having 2 or 3 people on a drone mission, we will see go the other way, where we may have a single human overseeing lots of drone missions. And so the human only gets involved if there's an exception. So you can think of a drone command center being like a call center, that you're only dealing with the problems. You're not dealing with every single operation. We trust the systems at some point, but then we have the humans deal with those outliers or those exceptions. So I'm very confident that we're going to be able to accept a lot more air traffic in our airspace system. A lot of people said, well, our airspace system, it's at capacity. It's nowhere near physical capacity. It's in places, it's at capacity in how we manage, but we're nowhere close to being at physical capacity. So I'm very optimistic that we can have an exponential increase in air traffic and actually still make it safer. And have it function effectively and ultimately environmentally better for not only communities like ours, but anywhere else in the world.
Thank you. And I know somebody mentioned in the chat about the drone highway that the UK has already implemented.
Yes.
Any other feedback from the other panelists? Yes, go ahead, Chris. Yeah,
I'll just tack on to what James was saying about the airspace and the integration of drones into our national airspace system. And, I do agree entirely with James, is we have lots of room in the lower atmospheres of it. But right now we kind of lack the will to recognize that we have to change the way aviation functions in the United States. We are only focusing on one piece of the pie, which is how do we make this new technology fit a system that was developed in 1920? And, it doesn't work. And so we have to get the administrations and we have to get the political will to embrace the fact that we have to change traditional aviation and we have to change approaches, and traditional aviation has to integrate with new technology to make everybody safer. I use this as an example with remote ID. Recently, all of the drone pilots in America are required, even recreational, for the most part, to broadcast their location and where the drone is, where it took off. And for many regards, that's a $300 upgrade for a drone that may only cost a couple $100. But yet we have all sorts of traditional flying craft that aren't regulated to that same level. Paragliders, hot air balloons, gliders, some gliders, even airplanes, if you're not flying in some controlled airspaces, do not have to broadcast their location. And so we have this very large growing number of pilots that is affected by this technology and embracing, well, we're not willing to change the old ways of doing things. And so that got brought up, and I wanted to tack in onto that there's so much more we could do, but we have to have the mindset that we're going to do it, and we're going to make aviation as a whole a better place.
Yeah, definitely agreed there. There's the and really this isn't new. Like remote ID is this new way of being able to detect all of the, we'll call them friendly air vehicles in the region or in the area, as far as your sensors will allow you to see them. But this is very similar. I may butcher the year here, but I believe it was 2012 with the widespread requirement for use of ADS-B to use on non-cooperative vehicles. That was a way for crude aviation, whether it's hot air balloons or ultralights. That was the way to fix the problem. And here we are 11 years later, and we're doing the same thing. I know there's a lot of nuances to it, but we're effectively doing the same thing. We're trying to manage the airspace and just give everybody situational awareness. So talking about how we have to adopt this mindset is really key into doing that, and that can come from working on the with regulation. That can work with just educating the masses on what's a UAV, what's a drone. James, I remember a talk that you gave. We were at Oklahoma University, and you were speaking, and it was at the time where if you said the word drone, that was a bad word, but we educated people. And we educated people, and we brought out, terms like, UAS. And then recently the FAA started using terms such as uncrewed rather than unmanned. And so it's more prevalent to more people's and more inclusive, but education is such a big thing. And that can be done through formal means, STEAM outreach, or even just talking to your neighbors who might be wondering what you're building in your garage.
Well, thank you all. So we're almost near the end of our session. I want to ask one last question for Shea. And we had to get started a little later because the other session ran over a bit. But Shea, also as an aerospace and mechanical engineer from the other side of the playing field, both focusing on counter-UAS technology and its integration into civil operations, what kind of advances have you seen or expect to see the integration of UAS technology making on reducing environmental impacts that contribute to climate change and by default healthy living environments?
Due to time, I'll try to make this quick. As far as the very short-term effects of UAS technology changing things such as global warming or climate change, I'm not going to speak as if I'm going to be able to say all of that well enough. But there are areas, and Adrian and Dawn in the meeting chat talked about a little part that I thought about, what I was thinking about already, which was lithium mining. UAS, electric propulsion, these are all things that are, as Don put in the chat, they're green, right? But how do you create that? How do you mine that? How much water do you use to mine, clean, and then how much water do you contaminate? How long does that stay contaminated and hurting the local economy, environment, people? And then on the flip end of the life cycle, how do you recycle them? There's LiPo batteries can also be dangerous. LiPo fires that could lead to houses catching on fire. There's a lot of plastics that are in houses and current building materials. But then even off of that, working with advancing battery technology, utilizing different elements. There is a professor who I believe is not at Oklahoma State anymore, but he was developing sodium ion batteries. that whenever you recycle them, they would not be harmful to the earth, and they were truly, or supposed to be truly, recyclable. And so getting that research of power distribution up and going would be useful. And then the secondary effects of, especially with healthcare deliveries, distributed networks for Wi-Fi or power, or even deliveries of medicine. As those things become more prevalent in our world, we're creating that infrastructure. And as the infrastructure is created, again, I'll harp on it some more, we educate the masses on the benefits of it. And so by pushing the things that are more seen by the world, which may be medicine, it may be humanitarian efforts, we can really bring the entire industry up in a way that it can first help the people who need help, and then help our way of life afterwards, our everyday way of life, such as advanced air mobility, personal Jetsons flying car, all the way to getting your groceries delivered to your backyard or front door.
Well, thank you. That was a nice summation right there. Wish we had a little bit more time to cover some of the other areas, and including the drone technology involved with just disease management and going into the body and those interstitial spaces. But we'll have to save that maybe for next year or a different panel. And thank you all for cracking your eyelids open in some instances to be here, and just juggling your schedules so that you could come and give us a bit of your knowledge. It's quite enlightening. I'm going to look at the recording when it's up and take some more notes, and then see where we can take nursing to the next level. So thank you, Dr. Christensen, for allowing us to speak.
Oh, thank all of you. That was a fantastic panel, just so interesting and thought-provoking, and so much to think about for the future. So it's been really fantastic to hear all these wonderful insights today, and really appreciate you all taking time out of your day, whether it's the evening or early morning, or any other time of the day, to come and join us. It's really been fantastic. So, and also a very special thank you, Robin, for organising it. You made my life so much easier.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Well, thank you all again. Take care, and hopefully we can see you all next time.